Hi there. You're listening to episode number 7 of the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Creed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, welcome. Thanks for giving us a chance and checking us out. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and open your heart. But first, a disclaimer. I'm not a therapist, not a counselor, and nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support, such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Today's quote: I thought I was here to teach my kids about all that's important in life. Turns out, they are the ones teaching me. That quote is by Raising Yourself. So as I begin today's episode, I wanted to start with, I wanted to let you know that I debated on sharing this part of my story. I thought the previous episodes covered all of my story. And that's not true. However, this particular part of my story just came about and is only 2 weeks old in my experience in life. And I debated on sharing it now because it is so new and fresh. And yet at the same time, I felt that, I know that when I was an estranged mom, that much of what I'm going to talk about today I had questions about all of those things. And I felt that my listeners deserve to hear this part of my story. And I'm all about being open and honest and vulnerable here. And sharing this part of my story is a piece of that. I will say that I am not willing to disclose the stories of my children. And there are parts of today's story that cross theirs, and I will only tell my side and my version. And if it crosses too deep into their story, then I will not share that out of respect for them when they're, if and when they ever come to a point in time that they're ready to share that with me in a way that allows me to share it with you, then I'm happy to do that. But until then, I will not. So I just wanted to get that out there and to let you know that there was some hesitancy in sharing today's story. That being said, I think it's important to know all the parts and pieces of a story if possible. And again, being open and honest and vulnerable on this podcast is very, very important and essential for me. And so I chose to go ahead and move forward with this. So the story starts, I ended and concluded, quote unquote, my story with, the estrangement and then the reconciliation and then, what life looks like post estrangement and reconciliation. And I got a lot of feedback from that particular episode when I talked about the lessons learned. Many estranged moms have reached out to me, and we've talked about that experience of mine. We've talked about their stories, and their stories will be shared on future episodes. And I have to say I was kind of taken aback at the response that I've had to that particular episode. And I think that today's episode, I'm hoping, will provide some hope and perhaps a willingness to entertain a new perspective. And I recognize that not a lot of parents have reached the point that I'm at in the relationship that I have with my daughters, post estrangement and reconciliation. And so it's much like foreign territory. I certainly did not know how to act and what to say in this particular experience, because number one, it's never happened to me before, but number two, I've not talked with anyone who has made it to this point. And so I felt that in sharing this, I feel like I'm hopeful that you, the listeners, will be able to gather some sort of different perspective and or hope, or just a curiosity of, the what ifs. And I wonder if it could potentially be this way for me down the road. So that being said, I received a text message from one of my daughters who let me know that she had been listening to this podcast and that she had also listened to the interview that I did, in which I was a guest on the podcast called When the Bow Breaks. And I did that podcast almost a year ago. It was in January of 2021 with When the Bow Breaks. And so my daughter informed me that she had listened to these podcasts and felt that it was time for her and her sister and I to sit down and talk about the estrangement, because she felt that it was for two reasons. One reason was to bring some clarity and hopefully resolve some misunderstandings. And number two, to help heal our relationships and to be able to move forward. So she texted that to me in a group text between the three of us, myself and my two daughters. And I said I was absolutely open to that and to let me know when and where. And so we agreed. When she sent the text message, we agreed that I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks out that we would meet. I think it was about 3 weeks out. And we decided, she offered to have us meet at her house or potentially a coffee shop. I said either one was fine with me. And my other daughter chose to meet, for all three of us to meet at her sister's house. So that's what we did. And that's what we decided on. And so when I got that text, I remember thinking, finally, I hope I can get some answers. And finally, hopefully this is going to really move us forward. And I got really, really happy. And then the next day I thought, oh no, what happens? Oh no, what happens if, and then I went through all the what ifs. What happens if the rug gets pulled out from under me? What happens if, I'm being set up to have another estrangement? What happens if what they have to say is something completely and totally off the wall? Although I have to say, I really didn't think that would happen. But because all of this was unknown to me, meaning what this meeting would be like, I really was like grasping at straws as to what it could potentially be. And so I called one of my friends and I told her, I said, I wonder if part of what I'm feeling is almost like being led to slaughter again. And those were my words. And this friend of mine is really really conscious and aware, and she really listens. And she said, why would you use those words to describe a meeting with your daughters? And I said, well, what words? Like, I really, it hadn't dawned on me the extent of what I had said. And she said, you said it felt like you were you could potentially be being led to slaughter. And I thought, to myself, wow, why would I use that language? Why did I feel that way? And so, I started verbally processing that with her. And she told me, she said, you know what? She said, the slaughter's already happened. And that was the estrangement. She said, I really doubt that your daughters have agreed to sit down and talk with you and have planned it out by 3 weeks and then are setting you up for another estrangement. She said, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And I told her, I said, I know it may not make sense to you because you've not been through this particular type of estrangement, and yet here I am because I have experienced it. I'm having all sorts of feelings about it. And that's what happens when you have a traumatic event in your life, right? It causes post-traumatic stress. And part of that is your body remembering all the emotions and felt sensations that you had during a traumatic experience. And for me, that was the estrangement. And so when I started to just, contemplating this conversation with my daughters, it was just automatic that my body went right back to the estrangement. And so I started using words and terms and was having physical feelings like I did when the estrangement happened, yet we were not estranged. We're not estranged currently. And so it doesn't make any rational sense as to why I was talking that way. So anyway, I recognized that, got myself, talked through that with her, and was like, you're right. Worst case scenario, if we do end up estranging again, I made it through that first one, and I can make it through another one if that's what happens. I didn't want that to happen. I certainly hoped that did not happen, but I had to prepare myself. So as the weeks rolled by, I thought about it, but I also did not think about it. And that was on purpose, because every time I seemed to go back to thinking about it, I got anxious. I started having some anxiety, and I thought, I can't live like this for these next 2 or 3 weeks. I can't live like that. So I kept myself busy and talked about other things and went on about my life. And so the week we agreed to meet on a Saturday. The weekend before, I had significant anxiety that Sunday before, and anxiety so bad that, I literally had to sit in my chair and talk to myself through the anxiety and the moments where I was my heart was racing and feeling like I was doomed and the end was coming. And again, I recognized, okay, this is part of post-traumatic stress. And this is what happens right here, right now. I'm okay. And anyway, walked myself through that. I think it was about 2 days later, I had a conversation with another friend of mine who also happens to be a therapist. And this friend said to me, we were talking about my upcoming meeting with my daughters, and this therapist said to me, and a friend said to me, well, what do you think that the anxiety is from? Are you anxious about having the conversation with your girls? Are you anxious about what may be said and the things that you may have to hear? Or, trying to figure out what exactly where the anxiousness is coming from. And as I talked through that, I was like, oh my gosh, I realized what it is now. I wasn't anxious about having the meeting, And I wasn't anxious about what they may potentially say to me, because I wanted the meeting too. And I knew going into it, I was expecting to hear really hard things. And so I knew that that was going to happen, and I was okay with that. I knew that that was a part of the process and that I would be okay getting through that. Where my anxiety was coming from was the fear of having, quote unquote, having the rug pulled out from under me like it did when they estranged from me. And so I had to get really clear with myself that this meeting, this upcoming meeting with them, this experience with them was not the estrangement happening over again. Because I did not want to go into that meeting having any part of the reactions and feelings that I did when they estranged from me, because we're no longer there. We're no longer in that space and time in our lives, and we're here today, and today looks very different than it did during the estrangement, when the estrangement occurred 5 years ago. So I got through that anxious, and then I had the rest of the week, and I was not anxious at all. It was really great to be able to just continue on with my week and not feel all of these, negative emotions. So I got up that Saturday morning that we were planning to meet, and I had a little bit of, a couple of moments where I was a little anxious, a couple moments when I was teary-eyed and, not knowing what to expect, I'm walking into the unknown. But overall was doing pretty good. And so got in my car, drove to my daughter's house, and she lives about an hour away from me. And so again, had time to think and process. And when I arrived, I saw that my other daughter's car was already there. And I remember thinking, I pulled in to park, and I sat in my car, and I thought for a split second, oh my gosh, I'm walking in here alone. There's no one here, quote unquote, on my side. And they're already together. And for a quick second, I had, what are they plotting and planning, right? And as soon as I had that thought, immediately following that, I thought, stop. They've asked you to come here. We've all agreed to be here. And we've all agreed that we're coming to have these conversations to clear the air and hopefully heal and move forward. They're not plotting and planning anything against you. Stop. So I got out of my car, went up and walked inside, and it was a little tense, kind of not knowing what to do or say, not knowing where to start, who says what first, kind of thing. And so I just allowed them to take the lead. And that's what they did. And so one daughter went first, and she gave me her reasons for estranging. And she started off by saying, I wanted to bring some clarity to this and clear the air because I listened to your podcast, and I think we need to set a few things straight. And so then she started telling me about the reasons why she estranged. And I was stunned because it was nothing what I thought it was. It really wasn't. And, what she told me was what I have since learned about estrangement is that it did not come out of the blue. She had been dealing with trying to be in relationship with me for many years. And but what happened is that there was that proverbial straw that broke the camel's back moment for her, and that's when she estranged. And that moment was a conversation that she and I had about college for her, and the financial piece surrounding that. And so she also let me know that the other piece to that was, and I think that we as parents run into this more often. I think this happens more often than not, but it's something that we don't recognize ourselves for the most part. And that is when I split from my partner and went through that separation. I basically treated my daughter as my life partner. Obviously not in a intimate way, but in the ways of, expecting her to do help around the house in ways that I would have done with a partner. Making sure, dishes are done and helping to make meals. And she, at that time, was still in high school. And that I relied on her emotionally, and that I was not allowing her to be a teenager. And that was really hard to hear. I knew it was absolute truth. I did not know that at the time that it occurred in her life. But it was absolutely true. And so I listened to her. I apologized for putting her in that position and, hurting her in that way. And we talked about a few other things that I won't get into, but we kind of cleared the air. And then her sister told her side and why she estranged. And again, for reasons that were not really what I expected. She was defensive of her sister, and she saw the pain that her sister was going through. And, she was upset with me because of my not being involved with her children as much as I wanted to be and should have been by my definition, but also hers. And she really was really upset with me because of the way that I had been treating her sister and relying on her sister, and instead of being the mother and finding my own outlets for the emotional turmoil that I was in. So, and she and I talked about some other things, again, some things that are very personal to her that I won't get into. But the bottom line is, the reasons they estranged were not things that I knew about and not things that I had considered. And so part of the reason why I wanted to share this with you and my listeners is that oftentimes the reasons we think that they have estranged are completely not the reasons that they have estranged. So that was eye-opening for me, and I apologized to my oldest daughter as well, and one of the things that they talked about was that by listening to this podcast, and they had heard me talk about how I was walking on shells, and I did not want to, I did not invite myself to things, and I did not ask questions and things like that. And they both said, and here we are, they both said something along the lines of, and here we are on the other side thinking, Mom doesn't want anything to do with us. Mom isn't, coming with us to things. Mom isn't, asking us questions about our lives. And so evidently she doesn't want anything to do with us. And so they were thinking something that was totally not correct, just like I was thinking something that was totally not correct as to why they estranged. Their thoughts about why I was acting the way that I'm acting now were completely off base. And so I shared with them, the reason I was walking on eggshells is because I feared another estrangement. The reason I didn't invite myself was because I didn't think they wanted me there. Because if they wanted me there, they would invite me. And they were like, well, we want you there. We want you to come with us. But we don't want to always have to be the one asking you. And so it was such an eye-opening experience that we had all of this confusion and beliefs about one another that were just totally off base. And so I agreed. I was like, I want to be involved. I want to do things with you guys and those types of things. And so they laid out some specific examples of things that I could do when I asked them. And I absolutely agreed to those things. And at the conclusion of that, we met for an hour and a half. I had set up with intention to have my therapy appointment after meeting with the girls. And so we met for an hour and a half before I had to leave to go to my therapy appointment. And before I left, we sat down and we put things on the calendar to do together with the upcoming holidays. And when I got up to leave, I gave them hugs, and I told them that I loved them with everything that I am, that they are my kids. They'll always be my kids, and I'll always love them. And that I was so very sorry for having ever hurt them. And I got back the biggest hugs that I think I've had in, since they were little. So I say this, and I know that not every estrangement between parents and adult children is going to end up where I'm at in my relationship with my children. I know that. But I want to encourage you as parents, as estranged parents, to try to work through your own hurts, your own pains that estrangement brings. And I know the heart-shattering pain that comes with estrangement. And I know that we want a cure and a fix and a healing to take place ASAP. I also know from experience that repairing and transforming relationships takes time. We didn't get to estrangement overnight. There is a build up to that. There is a lead up to that. And so just as we don't get to estrangement overnight, we don't get to reconciliation overnight, and we don't get to healing in a place of no longer having to walk on eggshells overnight. It took 4 years of me walking on eggshells to be able to get to where we are today. It took 4 years of me not inviting myself and not asking my children things and not inserting myself into their lives. But here we are. We made it. And I think that a big reason why we made it is because of the inner work that I've done in healing myself so that I could be in a place for 4 years of walking on eggshells and it not take me under. so that I could be and spend 4 years of my life being okay with that, knowing that there's the potential it may always be this way. But for me, I would rather do that and have my children in my life than to not. So I think the reason why we have been able to come to the place that we're at is because of the inner work that I've done, the forgiveness I have given for my children, the apologies I have given to my children, and their willingness to see my changes, to listen to the podcast, and to risk being vulnerable but courageous in putting themselves out there to say, hey, we need to talk and we need to clear the air. But they could not get to that place, in my opinion. They could not get there without me first getting to the place where I was in relation with them, where I stopped doing the things that were causing them pain. I stopped, and I got to the place where I could accept them for who they are, as they are, right here, right today, right now, without an expectation that they do it differently, that they be something different, that they act a certain way, or they change the way they act. I was accepting of who they are as they are. And when they got to see that over and over and over and over again, then they were willing to come to the table. And that's why I say oftentimes that parents have to lead the way. And I know I get messages every day from estranged mothers who rake me over the coals and tell me they're not changing anything, they haven't done anything wrong, and it's the children's fault, and if they want it fixed, then they're going to have to fix it, but the parent's not going to do anything. And if that's working for you, then that's what you have to do. Every estrangement journey is different. Every reconciliation journey is different. And you have to do what is best for you. And if that is working for you, then I say more power to you. That did not work for me. Every day it was like ripping my heart out without my children in it. And I was willing to do whatever it took to bring me and my kids back together. And that's what worked for me. I'm not telling you that's what you have to do. But that's what worked for me. And I am forever grateful. And I will be forever grateful that my children, my girls, have given me a second chance. I love them with everything that I am. And if they are listening to this podcast today, I am so proud of you girls. Thank you for being my most important teacher in this thing called life. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I thank you for the gift of estrangement and bringing me to a much better place with myself, in relationship with myself, and in the relationship we share together. So I didn't mean to get quite so emotional on this episode, but it really just, I recognize the gift that I've been given, and I know that so many parents are not there and may never experience this. And I'm grateful, I'm humbled, and I'm honored to be the mom to my daughters and to have this platform to share with you my journey in what's worked for me. And I hope and I pray every day for the healing, the repairing of relationships between parents and their adult children. Because we need them and they need us. In the end, bottom line. But we can't get to one another on this level without being willing to step off of the merry-go-round, to step out of the dance that we've been doing over and over and over and over again. Somebody has to stop it. And for me, it was me. So this brings episode number 7 to a close. I hope that you have been able to find something within this episode that brings clarity to you, a different perspective, a bit of wisdom, and maybe a ray or two of hope. If you feel that you would like to share your story on this podcast, please reach out. I can be reached via direct message on Instagram at The Estranged Heart. Also on Facebook at The Estranged Heart. I have a Facebook page. And you can also email me at theestrangedheart@gmail.com. I wish you curiosity and an open heart and a willingness to explore something different. Until next time.